All right. Good morning, everybody out there. Happy Sunday. Ah, gosh. It is September and frequencies have changed. I felt it, but now my system is open. And so I'm allowed to go and blow my nose now. My system has been conditioned, excuse my hair. My system has been conditioned to allow the growth to happen, and I get those hives. And then my immune system goes and distributes all the excessive growth into my lymphatic system, and then my lymphatic system distributes it to my filtration system, and it goes through my liver, it goes through my small intestines, large intestines, and then I release. But I also release through my nose and through my mouth. And so that's why in the middle of the night, when I go through an energy conversion and there's growth attached to it, then I'm able to blow my nose. Okay? And so what do I do in the middle of the night? I have my towels and I'm blowing my nose, blowing my nose, blowing my nose. And I get it all out. I hawk up loogies and I'm fine with that because that's what's necessary to release my demons. So you never want to stuff the genie back in the bottle, ever. And this is what I do all night long when I am developing growth because of a frequency shift. And frequency shifts happen based upon the seasons changing. And since we're in climate change, and you can take that however you want it, but we are in aggressive climate change and the climate is changing all the time. You're not getting a lot of respite in between. I think there was a few days I felt like I was relatively normal. And then there is climate change. But if you're under the influence, if you're already in pain anyways, and if you under the influence or in pain anyways, it doesn't matter what you're under the influence of, you won't really get where I'm coming from. You'll blame someone or something, or you won't feel it, or you'll think I'm just fucking crazy. And I get that. But those who are not cured in the J world, that have been around my information for a while, they're not cured, they're not taking anything, they're just eating food, releasing demons, and they're feeling the frequencies. They know exactly what I'm talking about because they're not under the influence. And they know they have to be in pain, and they can manage it with whatever they have to manage it with. And they know they have to be in pain for a certain amount of time. And remember, I was in pain the last 7 years, on and off. More so the last 3 years. I mean, I dealt with certain symptoms, a lot of them, in the beginning of the J world, just activating my immune system. But with the crazy climate change, when 2019 kicked off, that's when I had most of the pain. Okay, and that was aggressive. That was like released. That was like an exorcism. The last 3 years in my world was a major exorcism. What's an exorcism? When you release the demons, and it does come out in mucus. It comes out in painful energy. It comes out in hives. It comes out in headaches. It comes out in diarrhea. It comes out in throwing up. Okay? You've seen The Exorcist back in the 80s. I mean, I didn't, but I watched it later on when I was a young adult. I'm like, oh, okay. And we know the Catholic Church and the Rosicrucians understand the black and white checkerboard of turning things on and turning things off, the binary-driven arguments. And so to pick up where I left off yesterday, okay, the evolution of change is walking away from the war between the states of existence and resistance, between the living and the half-dead resisting life. All right, so what does that actually mean? Well, we're in war right now. You probably don't think we're in war, but we've pulled out of Afghanistan. We have no reason to go to Kuwait or Iraq or Iran or North Korea. We have no reason to go and do anything with China. I mean, we hear about stuff, but I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about Russia. Okay, I don't care what people say. Oh God, watch out for China and Russia. No, I'm not worried about them. We're in a war of ourselves, and we've been told that climate change is coming. Climate change is coming. Sustainable development, old world, new world, Georgia Guidestones, so many things. Now we have a pandemic, COVID-19. So we're at war, but now it's the weather wars. But you cannot blame anyone because it's a worldwide type of thing. It's not just America. It's not just Africa or Asia or New Zealand or Australia. It is a worldwide war like World War III, and it was the kickoff was the 1960s. The World War III was the kickoff in the 1960s, and everyone was radicalized, and you can trace it all the way back to the Spanish and then the British Empire and then colonialism, and they studied Greek history, Greek mythology. They studied all the things in the Greek and Roman times and ancient Egypt, and then all the different religions and all that stuff. And so there was a specific master plan that was developed. And why wars happened from that point on? Because people resisted the changes. They didn't like what was going on. They didn't agree with it. And that's with any war. I don't care what it is. I don't care who started or who didn't start it. When I had an agenda, I wanted to figure something out, and people were resisting my information, a war started. I just developed something that was awesome to me back in 2016. And then when people didn't like the fact they had to face their demons, then they were resisting the information. They were resisting my information. They were resisting their bodies. And then they were exploited. So that's why war happens. Because there's a master plan. Somebody is developing a master plan. They're rolling it out. People get wind of what it is, develop their perceptions, and they resist. That's war. And it doesn't matter what you perceive what someone's doing or not doing. And it probably is true. But be lucky you weren't way back in the Middle Ages when they just didn't tell you what they were going to do. I mean, they didn't have the internet back then. They didn't have, they had town criers and stuff, but getting the word out was like through, someone on a horse and and riding throughout the night to send word that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, warning people. Okay, so we have the internet that develops warnings to people. And I don't care what you warn them about, you have the internet to give you all this information. You have the government giving you information. You have mainstream media giving you information. You have your friends and family giving you information. I don't care how you characterize it. They're warning you something's happening, something is going on. Okay? And so back in the 1960s, the kickoff to World War III was the fact that, yes, they needed to channel the rage. See, how do you get people to be motivated? A little bit of starvation, a lot of aggressive intention. People get angry, they get depressed, they get angry, and they do whatever they do. So that's why I'm getting that book I'm getting, Prairie Fire, was the blueprint of how people reacted to the war that went on in Vietnam, that so many people were opposing, but it was for a reason. Because there was master plans. Yes, there had to be communism in some places because they had to bring people together, but America was not ready for that yet. They knew that it was going to happen eventually, but it was not something that needed to happen yet, and they didn't want that. And I'm just speculating, okay, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the presence of Lyndon Johnson and whoever told him to say, okay, declare war and go in there. But they weren't prepared to have communism yet, and they wanted to help out the South Vietnamese. So whatever. But anyways, somebody was radicalized, and they were radicalized back then. Of course, it doesn't matter who started what. Okay, we know the Bay of, the Bay of Tonkin, who lobbed the first grenade after, that. So whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter who started the war. There's a war because somebody had an intention and someone was resisting the intention. Hey, John. And that's it. All right. And people radicalized, and then war begets war, and then violence begets violence. And then there you go. And so you're not supposed to develop violence. Okay. So if there's violence and a government says we're going to war in Vietnam, people protest, and that's what they do. Then and you violate the laws and did what the Weather Underground did, then yeah, you're going to go to jail. And so now that we look at hindsight as 2020, and then we look at January 6th and what the right wing is doing, no different than what the left wing did back then. No matter what, the right or the left, you're not supposed to be an anarchist. You're not supposed to go and overthrow anything that has been developed as an organized process. And so what I said, the evolution of change is walking away from the war between the states of existence and resistance, between the living and the half-dead resisting life. Okay, so people are like, we are the resistance. Yeah, that means you are the dead. So you see the right wing out there, like Alex Jones says, we are the resistance, and everyone's buying their t-shirts and buying all the swag and all that stuff. And so what you're doing is you're advertising that you're willing to die for your belief systems. Okay, that's fine. We're in a depopulation agenda. We're in a scale down. If that's your intention, is to die for your belief systems, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. We appreciate what you've done, what you've been doing, and we thank you for dying for your beliefs. And I'm living for my beliefs. So there you go. That's the balance of it. And so when I said we are the existence, not the resistance, it says I'm willing to live for my beliefs. You're willing to die for your beliefs. We're not the same, but we are the balance. And I won't resist you. You won't resist me, because I ain't going to I'll let you do what you do. But what do I do on Facebook? I just get out my frustrations, because it's tough watching people self-destruct. But you also can't help but watch it like a train, like a train, like watching, what is it? Oh shit, I can't even think of that term, idiom. Like watching a train self-destruct. And so, oh gosh, what is Jane saying today? Jane said something. I'm just going to see what she said real quick. Oh, okay. Jane said, with lashings or Lurpak, Norpak, with the bread. I posted a bread. Anyways, okay. That's what she said. And so we are the existence, not the resistance. And that means that we live for our beliefs. We don't die for our beliefs. But if you want to die for your beliefs and you want to be the resistance, Alex Jones, and everyone that follows Alex Jones and Luke Radowski and any of those resistors, more power to you. I am not going to at all go on your page and try to convert you, because you can't convert people who are dead set to pass away someday, if not now or later. You can't tell them that they must live. You don't want to do that, because remember, we're in competition. This is the war for life. We are competing for resources. And if they have been psychologically programmed to die for their beliefs and not move out of harm's way, you don't get in the way of that. But there are people who are like-minded, like me, who I'm trying to talk to. Those that think I'm fucking stupid and whatever, that's fine. Thank you for your service. I ain't talking to you. I'm talking to people like John, like Audrey, like Pip, like those that have been following me and have been actually taking on some of the information that I've put out there, and still have to straddle their world and my world and figure out how they're going to do it. Okay? And it's not easy. It's not easy straddling worlds that are very much diametrically opposed, because you are up against people around you who want to pass away, who can't wait to pass away. Okay? And so I'm going to get to that one later. So I said this. So John is out of England. He is John Oakes. So I'm glad him and I are kind of bantering back and forth around this information, because he's part of the British Empire. He is a descendant of the British Empire. He's in the British Empire. He's been around the British Empire for fucking years. Maybe 40 years, 30 years, I don't know. I mean, I think he's Gen X. Okay? And so his dad was part of the British Empire. And before that, his dad's dad, mom, everybody. And so he is definitely like someone that is in it. Smart as fuck. And he knows it. Of course, been radicalized in certain things, because they know something's going on, even in Britain or Great Britain or England. They know something's going on. But when you had England that turned into Great Britain, and then now the United Kingdom, that's already the beginning of a one world. That was the merging of people, okay? The merging of countries. All right, so that already should have told him that this is not going to stop. The one world order with city-states and all that is not going to end. You can't stop what's coming. You can't stop it at all. There's Invest 95 in the Atlantic that's heading towards Florida, towards the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic coast. You can't stop what's coming. It's here. Now figure out what the plans are. And they've been telling you if you just stop resisting people, right? They're telling you, they're showing you those maps. When you look at those maps of the future maps of the world and the continents, and you see how they have, where the ocean is and where the land is, then you'll see how you could use lasers to carve out islands and break up land masses. And then you hope you're in somewhere where when they show you that most of Nevada, or if all of Nevada and states to the west are going to be underwater. Right now, they're flooding out right now in Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada. They're under so much water right now. When you see that's kind of what the future is, and the future could be tomorrow, okay, as far as realizing stuff. Then you have to literally plan your escape, plan where you're going to live, plan to figure out how you're going to survive this great reset. So I will say the British Empire is very, very, very fucking smart. They taught America to be an imperial. That's what I gathered from the Weather Underground, is that they're blaming American imperialism. But when you think about it, who taught America? We're only 247 years old. We don't have enough experience to be colonists and to think that we've invented it. No, Americans not invent imperialism. It's not, we're too fucking young. But we have been used as a scapegoat, used as a tool. The men and women have been used for so many things. So have people in the United Kingdom and all other places. But when I was watching that movie again, and this time it's not being censored, some parts it's censored because of inappropriate viewership or inappropriate scenes. So I'm watching on Netflix and it's showing everything. And I'm like, holy shit. Some of the scenes in there, when I'm watching on terrestrial TV, they've cut out. So I never really, when I watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High on TV, they cut out the scenes about sucking penis, 13-year-olds doing this shit, talking about this stuff, or 15-year-old. They cut out the topless chick in high school, okay? And so, yeah, American girls have been completely sexualized. Boys as well. And so, yeah, my age group back in the 80s, you didn't stand a chance. Now I understand what my husband was exposed to, because I wasn't exposed to all that stuff. We can watch Sesame Street and the sitcoms, you know, during the week, the prime time, what do you call it, viewership, like Who's the Boss and Perfect Strangers, but I don't watch any of those teenage movies. I think one time we watched the Omen when I was at a sleepover, and that was it. That was my extent of my horror movies as a child. And then I didn't even stay in high school. I got a GED, so I didn't even get to hang out with people of my age because I was too busy experiencing other things. Okay? So now that I'm 50 and I'm not watching regular television, I'm watching actual movies that my husband watched when he was a teenager, and it shaped him. I'm seeing what shaped my husband. I'm seeing what shaped people in his town. No wonder there's so many single mothers out there. No wonder everyone is so fucking hot to trot and sexualized and so obsessed with sexual orientation. No fucking wonder. You didn't stand a chance with Phoebe Cates and Jennifer Jason Leigh and Judge Reinhold. Oh my God. You didn't stand a chance. You didn't. And then after that, in the 90s, 2000s, then you have American Pie. Holy shit. And so I would say the British Empire is very smart. Shakespeare, he knew. They knew. Like your parents, learn from their mistakes. So learn from your parents' mistakes. Hold no grudges. Move on. Develop a way to handle the change. Manifest no enemies and manifest nothing to resist. Ignorance will destroy you. If you're told you will be in harm's way now or in the future, process the information. Develop an escape. Do it now before most of the population gets wind of what's to come. Because once the general population realizes what's going on, you'll have already invested in a safer place to be and prepared to hunker down. You literally have to be so much more savvy and strategic than your neighbor. If you're in Florida and you know my information and there isn't any hurricane coming on you yet, but one's going to come up again, and prices up north of housing is relatively inexpensive, like my area, you could buy a house for maybe $100,000, $200,000. And if you have a lot of money in Florida or wherever else, you can afford to come out here. Get out now before you and everyone else panics. And I would say living in the southern states and on the coast is iffy. Okay, because of all those hurricanes coming through, how many times are you going to rebuild? I mean, even though you see the map, it shows like Georgia and other places. But okay, as long as you can handle and survive every single hurricane that could come through and tornado. Okay? And I would be careful of Oklahoma and Kansas because of all those tornadoes. But maybe there won't be as many. It's hard to say. Probably not. You never know. They're cleaning up the fucking land. Okay? So, I mean, I saw New Mexico is not a bad place to be. It still shows on the map. So maybe that's a good place to live, I guess. I wouldn't want to be in California. And I would not live on the West Coast or even in Phoenix or Las Vegas as you're seeing. Okay? This is when you must act. Deer in headlights for a minute and then wake up. Those living in Europe and all the continents, read the information Forbes magazine developed. Pay attention to the future of your land. The future is coming fast. How much proof and evidence do you need before you have to make a move? When you're slow to react, especially to survival, you may not survive. This is when the rubber meets the road, and when the system has no problem doing what it did to Hawaii, they don't care about you. They already warned you. And so when you think about the Greek city-states, and you think about what they want Hawaii to be, what they want Maui to be, the first smart city, that's like a city, that's an island, it's a city-state. It's contained. It is it's easily controlled. Okay, so when you have that as a prototype and everything works and all this other stuff, imagine how many other prototypes in other areas of the world. And all you gotta do is get a laser and carve out the land, carve out the islands, develop water to wash away the useless eaters that don't want to change and don't want to plan their escape or plan another way to live. Okay? The writing's on the wall. I mean, you've had so many years to process this, but when you are in resistance, you don't process, you just resist, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. Iced coffee. Just because you see water in what used to be a dry desert does not mean it cannot turn into a large body of water connecting to large rivers and then feed out into the ocean. Water is life, and water can be weaponized. Understand the power of water in large amounts, especially in the Southwest and the Four Corners. And you're seeing again in Las Vegas, they are under so much water. They had such aggressive rainstorms. People are flying into Vegas, okay, wanting to go party. And yeah, I guess it's fun to go party in a bunch of water. But eventually, even the adult playground like Las Vegas is going to go to the wayside. Okay? The Maui, people are not going to go back to a Maui. I mean, they might for a minute, but how many times, you're going to have another wildfire? Wildfire. Okay? The writing's on the wall. The America's playgrounds are going to be no more. I mean, Orlando, Disneyland, that's all going to go to the wayside. Yeah. It's like a mother teaching her child that until you earn your right to go play, she's taking away all your privileges, all your vacations, all of the fun things, taking away your video games, taking away, the toys, and now you have to go and sit and study. That's why I'm so familiar with what's going on. That's when I was at home in the beginning of the pandemic, and they're like, lockdowns, wear masks, stay home, stay safe, all that type of shit. I'm like, I've been raised with this shit. And it was so strangely familiar. It's like how my mother raised me. The government is treating the people who have absolutely no care in the world how they're doing shit or what they're doing, is treating them like children and punishing them for not changing, for not evolving, for forcing them to be your parents. But they taught us that well. Now they're unteaching you. Can you unlearn everything you've been taught? Well, we'll see. You might when the rubber meets the road. And so I said, pay attention. The future is now. The system does not care about you. You must care about yourself. When you finally realize the truth, or maybe my warning held water, I hope it's not too late. The system wants to warn you through psychological operations, but they do not want you to be prepared until they tell you to be prepared. But some things you cannot prepare for in the short term. So then you must prepare for the short, long term. Remember, you will get the proof after the fact, and those who survive will see the proof, and those who do not, it won't matter anyways. And so when I was questioned by people, well, prove that you can live forever, Jillian, prove that you're immortal. You're not going to live long enough to see that because you're already believing you should die someday. So there's nothing to fucking prove to you. Now, with this whole thing with the weather warfare and the onslaught of the coasts through all these different hurricanes and climate change, well, if you survive, you'll see the proof that you're going to have a lot of hurricanes coming at you. If you survive, then maybe you might pick up and leave. If you don't survive, it ain't going to fucking matter. So if you don't plan to live indefinitely, people who don't believe in immortality, if you don't believe, it doesn't matter what my proof tells you, because you ain't going to fucking be there to see it. That's the deception of asking for proof. Now you have to understand indicators. You have to look at those around you who are the future for you if you don't change. Your parents should be an indicator where you're going to fucking end up. Now, are you going to do everything opposite of your parents? Well, you don't even know how to even distinguish what opposite is. You have to go into physics and chemistry and biology because you'll think, oh yeah, my parents took prescription drugs, so I'm going to take holistic drugs. So you think you're doing opposite of your parents. No, you're doing the fucking same thing. So you have to learn deeper than what the system is giving you as an alternative to what you think is poison or whatever. And so when I showed that Florida weather map that shows Katia and Gert and Idalia, and then it shows, I think it's called Hurricane Lee, the one that's Invest 95. Well, that looks like it's heading towards some pretty aggressive stuff. All right, so, hold on. So if you are in my town in Ohio, away from the crazy southern tornadoes, because I wouldn't want to be like down there in Zanesville or Coshocton or any of those southern out there in the rural areas. Don't sell. Stay put, in my opinion. Canton, Akron, Cleveland area might be your best bet. Make sure you have a basement. I can't rule out tornadoes. I can't rule out local flooding, but it might be better than most. I can't rule out deep freeze either. Make sure you have wood and a fireplace. That's my educated guess. Okay? And so somebody, it's called Climate Change World, and this guy who runs it, I think he's out of, like, I don't know, Mexico or something. Something big is coming, and you see all these beams of light that are illuminating straight down from the sky all the way down, or they see beams of light that are just shining in the sky, and it doesn't look like something you would see natural, and it's during the day. And so strange lights have been spotted in several parts of the world in recent weeks, and it's feared something big is coming in the next week or months. Yeah, shit's happening. 9/11, whatever, okay? Oh gosh, yeah, so fast times at Ridgemont High. Now I know why everyone out there was so hot to trot in the 80s and in high school. Not me, I didn't take part in any of that shit because I didn't even go to fucking high school. I left actually at 8th grade, maybe went to a few classes in 9th grade, and then I went fucking crazy. I was rebelling so much, and so that's when I ended up in certain institutions during that time and in group homes. So I was never around my peers. So I didn't get to watch those crazy movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or any of those horror movies. And so not me, I didn't take part in any of that shit. The movie was basically an instructional on everything. Oh my God, you all didn't stand a chance. Yeah. And so when your parents haven't been programming you really because they're either on welfare watching TV and smoking cigarettes and you're out there playing around doing whatever, you're still watching TV. you're still trained and influenced by your peers who have been exposed to a lot of information. These girls didn't stand a chance. Neither did these guys. No, they didn't. Not with those movies. The way I saw it yesterday, where there's nothing censored out of these movies. Holy shit. And so then, I was thinking about Weather Underground in the 1960s, and then even in the 80s, children, and being so sexualized at a young age. When there is so much kinetic energy and no proper outlet, really, rage or energy is built up, then it just takes a certain kind of trigger to release the demon. So that's why there's so many single mothers out there. They were so sexualized in high school. People were having sex in high school. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was exactly what they wanted these children to, what they wanted them to do and act like. No different than American Graffiti, okay? Then it been to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And then, of course, American Pie. But American Pie, you know? And so, yeah, then you have all these girls that are in these fantasy lands, and they're so sexualized, and they're looking for Mr. Right. And Mr. Right's like, what the fuck? I'm not having children, or I'm not going to be raising children. And so you have a billion single mothers out there. And the men are stressed out because they're not ready to raise a family. They weren't prepared for that, really. And so rage or energy is built up. And it just takes a certain kind of trigger to release the demon. That's why you have so much aggressive energy out there. There's so much rage in people, and it comes out in so many different ways through the hormones. Back in the 1960s, the war was what caused a rage in the anti-war people. And in the system, and then the system took that rage on both sides and channeled it into innovation. Right? So once they figured out you can't be bombing things and people, you get put in jail. The war is done with. They pulled out of Vietnam because everyone's going nuts. And now let's put you in academia. Now let's go and develop curriculums to implement change, because we know war is not the way to be. Whether it's anti-war or pro-war, you're still developing some kind of violence to get your point across. And so the system took the rage on both sides and channeled it into innovation. Then you have the 1980s. All right, so those that were in the Weather Underground then became professors in these high-level colleges, Harvard, Columbia, and they went and taught whatever left-wing ideology they needed to be taught. And I went to City College of San Francisco, and yes, the professors that I went to school with that taught me, definitely left-wing. Definitely left-wing. Nothing wrong with it, but that's what they're trying to implement change. And San Francisco is like the center of the universe, the hub of it all, right? And so then you have the 1980s, channeling sex and violent rage in horror movies, developing biotech and technology, and all the different ways to gamble on the stock market. So since I wasn't particularly groomed for anything specific as far as occupation, I was groomed to be a hot chick and with academics, and I was groomed to party, when you think about it. What was I going to fall into? Well, either marry somebody rich, but I didn't fit that model of Stepford wife. And so it would have been the latest thing, selling mortgages during the mortgage crisis, right before the mortgage crisis, gambling on the stock market, doing whatever you're doing, looking for a husband, whatever, right? And so, yeah. And so when someone declares war on you, walk away. You want to change the system? Change yourself, represent, don't force convert. That's why you have the internet, to now cultivate your brain and to write. And yes, speak when you want to. But then you have community standards. And so when you think about the Georgia Guidestones, getting away from petty laws and useless officials, then when your community is online and you're not trying to be out there in the climate change and people popping off unexpectedly, then your community is online. Yes, you will build a conditioning and a dependency on the internet, but that's how they want it. Okay, that's exactly what the system wants. They want everything streamlined. I get my groceries through Walmart. I buy my books through Amazon. I'm not going to a bookstore at the mall. Okay, and so the system wants people to be online. And when you're online and you're dependent online, then they can shape you to be a peaceful, intellectual person who has the intention to learn and to modify their behaviors. And when there's bad behaviors like bullying, then you have the power to block and delete. I mean, you can report them, but whatever. Why go through that process? Block and delete. Let them have their stuff and let the system control their actions, and let the CIA and the FBI and Interpol and MI5 and MI6 go and identify who they are and what they're capable of. It's not for me to go and try to modify someone's behavior. I just block the behavior. And I let, not the petty laws and useless officials, I let the system go and do minority report. What is minority report? They can do pre-crime, and they can watch a person and see when they slip up and break the law somewhere. And, so the system has strategy to figure out people psychologically, behaviorally, I'll tell you. Yeah. And so yesterday night, I was energetic, channeling my energy through writing, posting on Facebook. So yesterday when I woke up in the middle of the night and someone was commenting in the middle of the night, of course, and I saw that, and that was about education, then I started writing. And instead of being mad and wanting to go and get back at her and go and comment on her page and, do a tit for tat, no, I just block and delete her and kind of chuckled and be like, Frr. And then I wrote what I wrote. So then I did my Facebook Live. I ate a bunch of spaghetti with Swiss cheese. Definitely felt better, but I had my heartbeat faster. I had a few hives yesterday. I took a quick nap. And then, another round of COVID will come around this season. Already feel the energy in the atmosphere change. I hadn't felt my heartbeat fast in a while, and that was yesterday. Frequencies are changing, all right? So COVID is a specific algorithm in the atmosphere that brings up your symptoms. If there's a lot of infection correlated to that algorithm, you would come up positive on a titer test. Okay, so everyone has COVID. Everyone has AIDS. Not really. They have the AIDS. They have the antibody. Everyone has antibodies to something they were exposed to. When it becomes so numerous and they become so overtly influential, then you have the actual diagnosable condition. So we've all been exposed to COVID on some level. It's what the frequencies, the algorithms then trigger to influence the energy to come to surface. And then you also have other viruses inside your body or microbes that also run by algorithms and energy. And if one triggers the other one, just because I trigger somebody over there, I might be a minority. Like the whole J world, we triggered the mainstream. So say the J world is like COVID and the mainstream is like AIDS. Well, we triggered their AIDS virus. And so that's why the mainstream came down on us, because they were the most influential. They were the most numerous. And so it doesn't matter really the catalyst. It could be COVID. It could be an algorithm. It could be, next to a cell tower. It could be a frequency, whatever it is. Whatever is the most numerous will be the one to pop up positive on a titer test. Okay? And so that's how those titer tests work. You always have some form of the antibody or the antigen in your body. It's just how aggressive it is and how fast it grows and multiplies. Okay? Because someone told me the other day that they never had COVID last year, but they were in the hospital for intestinal colitis or some kind of colitis type of thing, where their organs were shutting down, and so they can't eat meat, they can't eat milk, drink milk, they can't have cabbage. And I'm like, oh my God. But they never had COVID, but they had a major aggressive disease. All right. Okay, so some people had COVID-19 trigger their symptoms, and some of their symptoms were so aggressive that it out-infected the COVID variant. So even though they didn't test positive for COVID-19, they were dealing with a major condition. Everybody has COVID because there are so many variations of it. Not everybody has the COVID-19. I mean, they have it, but it's not out of control. Sometimes other infections supersede. Now, this is the word supersede. Supersede, like it's a super seed, or supersede, outdo somebody, the variant at the time. So even though they don't have the actual variant of the day, they have a different infection that came to surface that was more aggressive and energetic than the initial catalyst. And that's what people are dealing with. So if you don't get tested for COVID-19, but you have an issue, I mean, you can get tested, but no matter what, you have an issue. Something got triggered. And that's why people are dying suddenly, and that's why they're getting all these aggressive diagnosable conditions. Okay? And so then someone's saying like Miami might get hit by this latest hurricane. And I posted old photos of family with 13 kids in Boston, Massachusetts in 1925. All right. Oh, yeah. Tens of thousands of people at Burning Man Festival in Northwest Nevada are being told to conserve food, water, and fuel and shelter in place after heavy rain overnight turned the desert into mud. So even Burning Man is getting washed away. So all those things people are doing, you know, the parties, the adult parties, the teenage parties, Burning Man. Yeah, is it a coincidence that during that time of Burning Man, they were allowed to have Burning Man? It was so hot and dry and everything, and they were having fun. And now it's all being washed away. Those traditions are going to end. The water is going to kick their ass. And I posted that song about flood, Jars of Clay, Flood, a music video. And what I was doing was I wanted to find a video because I was energetic yesterday and in a creative mode. And so I found this song called Jars of Clay, Flood. And the lyrics are, rain on my face, it hasn't stopped raining for days. My world is a flood, so let it become one with the mud. But I can't swim after 40 days, and my mind is crushed by the crashing waves. Lift me up so high that I cannot fall. Lift me up when I'm falling. Lift me up when I'm weak and I'm dying. Lift me up, I need you to hold me. Lift me up and keep me from drowning again. So, I mean, it's a really good song. It's a really fucking good song. And some people attribute to addiction. Some people attribute to the biblical stuff with Jesus lifting them up. Or when you're on the coasts or in Nevada and there's so much rain and you're getting one with the mud, somebody's got to lift you up out of the water so you don't fucking drown. Okay, so appropriate right now, so appropriate. And that's a really good song, like literally a good song. All right, and so I watched the movie Arrival with a lady, I forget her name. Anyways, it showed Hydra and it showed the Ouroboros. That right there, Hydra and the Ouroboros were the main symbols in that movie because there's these aliens that planted themselves, alien ships in 12 different places on the continent, all different continents. And they were developing contact and all that stuff. So it was really good. That's on Netflix. And then with Mitch McConnell, is that his name? Yeah, Mitch McConnell. And even Biden. Okay, him and Biden are symbolic of America aging out, falling apart. The system needed the silent generation and the boomers, Gen X, to develop the infrastructure. Okay, so you think about the silent generation developing the master plan, and even before that, and then you have the boomers carrying it out, and there's so many of the boomers, right? And they're having children, so their children are being experimented on. The Gen X, that's why we're called Gen X, because it's a crapshoot of where we're going to end up and what we're going to develop. And then the Gen X are going to have children, and also the boomers, the millennials, which are going to then replace their parents. And then you have the scale down. So then you have the alpha beta generation will be the canaries in the coal mine. What do you mean by that? The canary in the coal mine, sometimes, or something with sensitivity, whose sensitivity to adverse conditions makes it a useful early indicator of such conditions, something which warns of the coming of a greater danger or trouble by a deterioration in its health or welfare. And so when you have these kids that were reproduced on bodies in deficit, their parents' bodies, then you'll see who's able to handle climate change. So these children are going to be the canaries in the coal mine. And you'll see parents deteriorate, you'll see grandparents deteriorate. And so then him and Biden, Mitch McConnell and Biden, that's why you're not getting another person besides Trump as a running potential in these elections. I mean, yeah. So him and Biden are symbolic of America aging out. All right. And yes, the alpha beta generation are the canaries in the coal mine. They're gonna be fighting for their survival. And so, yeah, the frequency changed yesterday. I developed light hives, a little hungry yesterday, and then nap. Most of the night I was blowing my nose. I feel great today. Okay. You can see a little bit of swollenness in me yesterday. Blowing my nose, a little hungry this morning, but I'm drinking my coffee with cream. And so as far as the city-states, so when you think about Maui, Hawaii is going to be the prototype of a smart city, like a city-state. Okay, so when the internet is your government developing community standards, you won't need a government. You won't have petty laws or useless officials. There will be ways to control the population without developing so many agencies to manage disease. And so when certain people gravitate to certain places, I don't know how it's going to be distributed and what people, we'll see what happens. But kings and queens will always be figureheads of the past, and they always will be, okay? Parliament and Congress and a body of people reflecting the population will govern all the conduct of nations, and it will be done through electronic community standards. So when you're writing stuff, community standards, they can see kind of where your head's at. They can see propensity for violence. When you're so much in resistance, they can see, and that's how the Proud Boys were taken down, because they were organized and then they were radicalized and they put all their plans on Facebook, and then the system was ready for them. And then when they did cross those boundaries and rushed something, people are going to jail. One guy is going to jail for 10 years. 10 years. Holy shit. Okay? The system wants you to know the power of the New World Order. They don't want you to think that you have the power to overthrow them. You don't. You fucking don't. Okay? So what's the Georgia Guidestone saying? Now, in this state of existence that we're in, with all the information that we have seen at least the last year or so, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So when you think about all those city-states, when you think about the different islands and the different continents broken apart, and where they're going to grow food, and where they're going to have factories, and where they're going to have commerce, and where they're going to have living quarters. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction carefully or wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language called the internet. Rule passion, faith, and tradition, and all things with tempered reason, which means no extremism. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Wow, that makes sense. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. So if you have a little city-state called Ohio, and we have our laws and bylaws and all that stuff, they'll rule internally. They'll watch the citizens, figure out who's breaking the law, who has a propensity for violence, and act accordingly. And then if there's external disputes between the city-states, then the world court comes in and determines what needs to be done. So avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. All right. So when they finally figure out the system and everyone has to take part in the system, whatever it is. So you have a social duty to do whatever job for 20 hours a week. And then you have personal rights. Okay. So there you go. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. So prize whatever truth that isn't going to harm yourself or somebody else. Beauty is balance, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Remember the diversity. Love, yeah, dying and reproducing. Not everyone's going to understand the J world, so there's got to be some dying and reproducing, right? Seeking harmony with the infinite. Being okay with that we are going to keep continuing to exist, but things will change in the process of our existence. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Be not a cancer on earth means stop reproducing so much. Children who absolutely have no purpose. Make sure your kids develop a purpose to survive this climate change. Figure out where the system is going. Give your kids a fucking leg up. But to reproduce just for the sake of it because you're lonely, the system is not going to have that. By 2045, most people, if not all, will be basically infertile. And there will be birthing cities where the parents have been trained how to be the parents they want to see happen in the children for the future. And so if you're seeing that that's where things are going, that's why there's the abortion stuff. That's why the right pro-choice. That's why discouraging both men and women to not procreate. Because what kind of hell are you going to have to go through when they're trying to survive their diseases, and then all the different predators out there that can't wait to get their hands on them. And so when I said nation states, city states, right? The Greek, learn how the growth of city-states gave rise to modern cities. City-state, a political system consisting of an independent city having sovereignty over a contiguous territory and serving as a center and leader of political, economic, and cultural life. Now think of Maui. The term originated in England in the late 19th century and has been applied especially to the cities of ancient Greece, Phoenicia, and Italy, and to the cities of medieval Italy. The name was initially given to the political form that crystallized during the classical period of Greek civilization. The city-state's ancient Greek name, polis, was derived from the citadel, Acropolis, which marked its administrative center, and the territory of the polis was usually fairly limited. City-states differed from tribal or national systems in size, exclusiveness, patriotism, and passion for independence. The origin of city-states is disputed. It is probable that earlier tribal systems broke up during the period of economic decline, and the splinter groups established themselves between 1800 BCE as independent nuclei of city-states that covered peninsular Greece, the Aegean Islands, and Western Asia Minor. As they grew in population and commercial activity, they sent out bands of emigrants who created similar city-states on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea, mainly between 750 and 550 BCE. So then I said, 15-minute cities, 20-minute countries, less war, less disease, less bullies. That is the Georgia Guidestones and the intent of the New World. Large land masses broken up into islands or city-states. Large land masses used for commerce, infrastructure, food, and retail space. Pay attention to the plans said and not said, admitted and not admitted. Articles of fantasy not to be taken as fact, like that Forbes article I read the other day. Warning you, but not warning you. To be or not to be, that is the question. Okay? And what is that thing about Hamlet? I'm not reading the sonnet, but what is the poem To Be or Not to Be about? It, in the speech of Hamlet, contemplates death and suicide, weighing the pain and unfairness of life against the alternative, which might be worse. And so he's seeing whether or not is it worth it to be suffering from all the changes or just to commit suicide. And so you're going to have to figure out, are you going to sit through and deal with the change and deal with the pain and suffering of change? Or will you just treat yourself to death and resist? And so that's right now what everyone is facing right now as they're learning about the plans. Okay? That's why we are the existence, not the resistance. All right. And so I see this meme from the activist world. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. A man who tells the truth doesn't mind being questioned. A liar does. And so I'm like, okay, you know how many times I've been questioned by everybody out there? Dr. Phil, all my trolls, different people, the bullies out there. And I've answered them even when I was in the 60,000 person group and I developed so many files. And we all said, read the files, read the files, read the files. And we're like, what? I don't want to read the files. And so that's why I wrote a book. And if you didn't want to read the book or read the files, then I charged for my time. And then I had my own website, okay, that had its own forum of questions and answers. And so when someone says, a man who tells the truth doesn't mind being questioned, a liar does, then I said, do you really want to know someone's answer? Or do you want to counter and convert them? Like, what's your intention? When you have to answer questions, the same question all the time, that's why you write a book and stop answering questions. And so then I said, I've seen that meme all over. So when you're being interrogated for 30 hours by the FBI, the CIA, Interpol, thugs, you think you can stand up to being questioned by people in a jail cell going through torturous types of experiences daily? Really? Remember the Middle Ages? Remember Guantanamo Bay and detention camps? Wouldn't that be like crimes against humanity? Oh, you want someone to endure aggressive questioning? You want them to be tortured, and is that it? So you're okay with being in re-education camps, being questioned by officials? How many of you think you can stand up to these detention camps in China or North Korea? Do you really think you want to be answering so many fucking questions? no matter how much you think you have your own truth on your side? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't care how much you are religious and love whatever God you love. You couldn't endure what some of these detainees had to endure during all the different wars. It must be nice to be American, completely removed from what goes on out there in the real world. So when someone says that, me, a man who tells the truth does not mind being questioned, a liar does, then I want you to go and check yourself into a re-education camp and have them ask you questions 4 days. 4 days and hours and weeks, and then also have them apply some pretty aggressive stuff to keep you answering those questions. And to people who actually write these things, they have no idea what the fucking reality is about something like this. Completely removed from all reality. Don't understand war. Have never been in war because they've been so insulated in America. Like a child who has been entitled and given everything and been shielded from the realities of life until stress comes up, and then they're like going off their freaking rocker. And so that's kind of the issue with America, is that we have been so insulated. When was the last war that came to our soil that was actually an act of war? It was Pearl Harbor. Or 9/11, I guess. 9/11. So now we're having weather wars, and it's on your doorstep, and you haven't been conditioned to deal with it. And this is what comes out of it. People do not fucking think. So that's all I'm going to say. But, yeah. What's the main takeaway for today? We're in the process of reconfiguration. Survive it. Look at the plans, figure out your plan of escape and reconfiguration, get your kids prepared for this. Most people out there are going to be like, oh, she's stupid, she's whatever. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and hope my kids survive. Okay? We thank you for your service. Bye.